Okay. Good afternoon, dear Poland Forum members. I apologize in the name of Professor Judy Baumann-Schwartz, the director of the Arnold and Leona Finkler Institute of Holocaust Research, that she did not join us today, but maybe later she will join us. And dear guests, Forum Poland members, I would like to thank all the members who sent their articles to our forum book. We appreciate very much your efforts. Your articles are wonderful. And we are looking forward to all articles who are still in process. And we hope to see them soon. The subject of our lecture today is From Warsaw and Lublin to Haifa. The letters of Hadassah and Eliezer Lipa Bloch, 1933 till 1939. The lecture will be held by our Poland Forum member, Dr. Avital Bloch, research professor at the University of Colima, Mexico, since 1986. From 2005 to 2012, she directed the Center for Social Research. She holds a BA in History and Sociology from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem and MA in History, her PhD in American History. Dr. Bloch specializes in intellectual and political history of post-World War II period and the 1960s. She had published many articles and a few books, primarily on the 20th century United States, some on European history and other on comparative modern history topics. Recently, she began researching her family's history in Poland between the wars. This includes involvement of family members in Zionist organizations. In Warsaw Ghetto study, she focuses on Oneg Shabbat, as well as social assistance group and civil leadership of the underground. Avital, I would like to thank you very much for preparing this lecture, and I'm really sure that it will be very, very interesting. Avital, the floor is yours, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Hi, shalom everyone, wherever you may be now, and I appreciate you connected today. And I will present this paper. Hopefully it will be of some use to all of you or to some of you. So this presentation is about my family, and it's part of a personal project about my grandparents, Eliezer, Lizer in Polish, Lipa, and Hadassah Chaya and their children, Moshe, my father, and Esther, his younger sister. A project on the family history during the pre-war Poland and the Holocaust years has been on my mind for years. It all started with a small white cloth bag I remember from childhood. Those who grew up in Israel would recognize it as a school sakit ochel. In it, my father kept the letters he had received from his parents and sister beginning in 1933, after he had immigrated to Palestine, until 1939. I knew he had nothing left from the family, all murdered by the Nazis, except for saved photos and these letters. As a young teen, I finally opened the bag. I began reading the approximately 120 items written in Hebrew. The degree of Hadassah and Lipa's mastering the language was surprising, although they did not live in Eretz Israel. It was beautiful, informed, fluent, vivid, yet not overly poetic. Recognizing the importance of the letters, here you see some examples. Recognizing the importance of the letters, not only for the family, but for researchers as a historical source. Recently, my sister and I donated a collection to an important archive in Israel, Bet Lochamei Getaot, Ghetto Fighters House. And here you have the details for those who might be interested, because we hope this talk make researchers be intrigued to see the letters. They have recently been scanned and they are already available to see through the archive collection. I'm a professional historian, so the idea of family research has never left me. But my specialty, as Leah said, is history of the United States. I don't understand Polish and or Yiddish and know little Jewish history. We know historians of unrelated specialty who work on their family histories. Their projects become feasible due to surviving written materials by family members. This is the stuff to start with emotionally and technically. And these letters were my initial guides. Letters are good historical documents. In our case, they were consistently sent from Poland to Haifa, where Moshe settled. They were informative sources, they are informative sources, although we don't have letters Moshe sent back. However, from their letters, we may guess much of what he might have said to his parents. We can theorize that the communication was a dialogue, that the cross distance in almost real time shaped the relationship in the family. Through this, we learn about the individuals in their private and external contexts. Now, the main necessary details on each one of the Blochs. Lipa, whom you see here, the photos, was born in 1889 into the philanthropist Hasidic Hornstein family and grew up in Uman, Ukraine, moving to Lublin, Poland to marry Hadassah Blank. At an early age, he became a self-taught Hebraist, an activist in the General Zionist Party, and was close to Yitzhak Greenbaum, the head of Polish Zionism. He moved to Warsaw, was named the director of the Keren Kayemet Israel Jewish National Fund of Poland, and co-director of Hebrew School Network Tarbut. Here you see his photo from 1915, which means that he started activism and work in the Keren Kayemet much earlier, which was one of the reasons he was named then to head it. Hadassah, an only child, was born in Lublin in 1891, also into a Hasidic family. She studied in a Russian gymnasium, learned Hebrew, and turned into a leader in Jewish Zionist women's associations. She moved to be with Lipa in Warsaw, with Esther, who was born in 1920, who joined Yehudia Girls Hebrew Gymnasium. Moshe was born in Lublin in 1912. He graduated at a prestigious government gymnasium, got involved in Zionist youth movements, knew Hebrew, and immigrated to Eretz Israel on a student certificate in 1933. Settling in Haifa in 1936, he married Batya Fruchter, our mother. During the earlier years, here's a picture in her visit in 1934 in Eretz Israel. During the early years following Moshe's immigration, a constant topic in the correspondence was his future and the parents' ambitions and worries about his work. On the other end was his defensiveness. He even hid from them information they had to find for themselves. Lipa wrote in 1934, "Yesterday, we read in the newspaper that a new faculty was opened in the Technion in Haifa, Faculty of Technology. You have not written to us about that." They wanted him to study for a liberal profession as they had planned for him. Quote, "Perhaps there is a possibility you enter to this faculty, but Moshe did not want to become an engineer." Lipa expressed his bitter disappointment in his son. "A man like you remains apparently a man without a profession. It is not surprising that there is no perspective for growth. My impression is that you have no work chance at all. You are in an undesirable situation. You don't fulfill your job, or they aren't satisfied with you, and then you beg people for help." I want just to say that all the translations from Hebrew are mine, so they themselves are not professional translations, but I think they're good enough. The parents, in fact, were mostly unclear about his work status. Let me know, Lipa asked, about the characteristics of the various kinds of your work and what the chances for advancement are. Despite of begging for more letters, Moshe wrote less. After he got married, it was Batya, his wife, who took the initiative. Lipa praised her as the, quote, initiator and promoter of the writing, moving the wheels that generate Moshe's writing. While on his son, he said, Moshe is a big lazy regarding letter writing and neglects such things despite their high importance. But the parents has their own informers in Palestine. For example, quote, Nathan Dobzhinsky is visiting in Poland. We learned all that was possible. Or I was informed by Shamir, I don't know who that person was, who met you at your work. I thought you were busy also in an office, in administrative work. The parents wanted for him a position as a clerk. Quote, this was a guarantee that you would grow, changing from work that is not intelligent to a suitable work. Indeed, Moshe wanted to say little about his job, which was first as a manual labor at the Palestine Electricity Corporation, and then as a collector of customers' fees. More than prestige, Hadassah worried about the exhausting nature of her son's work. Quote, the collection job does not give me rest because it is so hard. To what degree one can work in hard labor, going all day down the stairs and up the stairs, up the mountains and down the mountains, and the burning heat is so heavy. When I think about this, my heart aches. I could not overcome and cried like a child. But what can I do to help? The parents' discontent with his work was caused in part by not understanding the options for a young male immigrant in Palestine, as much as it was out of the question to the Jewish bourgeoisie in Poland. To be a laborer was an embarrassment. On the contrary, the ideology of building the country in Palestine demanded it, and it was common to be hired for physical work. Numerous letters dealt with Lipa's attempts to help Moshe through his influential contacts in the Yishuv, political functionaries as well as intellectuals and writers he used to meet and host in Poland. Lipa cited to Moshe from what he had written to one of them, for example. This week I received the news that he, Moshe, got a raise and job permanency. Me and him are sure it happened thanks to your influence and intervention. The young ones who make their first steps need encouragement and guidance. Keep taking interest in my son and watch over him a bit. Lipa insisted on an irrational plan regarding what to ask the big names, complaining Moshe was too naive and abstract, considering he was only in his early 20s, mid-20s. You need to first define what you want, whom of the director to turn to, and how to use the high-up contact. He kept lecturing Moshe about how complicated and scientific the nature of protectia was. Indeed, Lipa efforts with his important friends were considerable. Two examples. One, to Avraham Hartzfeld, an important Yishuv leader, he says about him, I wrote again, and you need to see him, to visit him in his hotel and discuss the matter seriously. He asked me what I wanted, but I didn't know what to answer him. According to him, he has relations with the old man, who was Pinchas Rutenberg, the founder and director of the Electricity Corporation. Another example, I talked to Avraham Yaffe, head of the Keren HaYesod, about you. He is ready to help you, but does not know with what. Go to Jerusalem, say a few good words on my behalf. In short, from here, I cannot do anything concrete. A plan emerged to Lipa to travel to Palestine. In the summer of 1939, Hadassah wrote that she, quote, liked the idea of Abba going out to you instead of going to the Zionist Congress, and Moshe hoped for his direct intervention. Lipa ended up not going anywhere, neither to Palestine nor to the Congress, which took place right before the German invasion of Poland. Hadassah constantly tried to send to Haifa money, clothes, and food items. She details how difficult it was to get a government permission. On sending Moshe English wool for a suit, she said, permits are required for every little thing, even for a few meters of fabric. Yet I've not given up. Sometimes she used the option of sending stuff with someone else. She sent half a dozen shirts to Moshe and a fur collar to Batya. Whatever I can, I load on her like a camel, referring to cousin Branzunia, who went back to Haifa. Also, we send you through Mr. Bunim, who left to Eretz Israel a package, and it is an art calendar, Swiss cheese, and chocolate. Forgive me, the package is so humble. I had no time to buy and send things that are more important. On the money she had sent, she inquired, why don't you write what you bought with the money? Buy a coat. Off-season is low. The price is low. Batya, please make sure that Moshe buys a good coat. Yearning for contact with children was ever present. Despite opportunities, the parents had to see Moshe and Batya. Hadassah visited in 34. Batya and Moshe went to Poland to get married in 36. And Lipa visited Palestine in 37. But complaining about scarcity of letters was constant. Quote, have mercy on me and write. If we get letters, we worry, and even more if we don't get them. Concern about more, here are pictures from the visits, the various visits. Concern became more painful during the Arab revolt. Jews were killed by Arabs in significant numbers. Lipa and Hadassah knew that, quote, victims fall every single day in the pogroms. Receiving regularly the Dvar daily from Palestine, they were terrified. Quote, lately we're all nervous because of the events in Eretz Israel. Each newspaper publishes unpleasant things, but what are those in comparison to news about the victims and the fallen? We will revenge God, your servants shed blood. What will be the end of it? Write to us about the security situation in Haifa. Haifa is a mixed city, you know. We are full of worries. My life is no life. My sleep is no sleep. The safety situation here is also not 100%, she says. But, well, we are in Europe and it is not as frightening. Such was the angst of families whose children lived in Palestine. Quote, it is very hard to live in such times when children are there, wrote Hadassah. Her friend, Mrs. Radzikowski, for example, quote, is very anxious about her son. Her face looks extremely ill. Her life is not alive. For safety, the parents instructed Moshe and Batya, quote, you should not go anywhere. The best at these times is to sit at home, listen to me, and do not move. And obviously, no trips and no walks in the streets. They did not always obey, of course. Referring to Batya, Hadassah wrote, isn't she crazy to travel in such times? And to both she's saying, I'm not happy that suddenly you stepped out for a trip. What is it, a trip now? When things are not good news? When there are no good news? Now about the situation in Poland. Starting in 1936, anti-Semitism turned into a critical topic. Hadassah lamented that life is always hard, but like it is now, even the elders do not remember. Jews are getting beaten, just like that, for sports, in Warsaw, in the middle of the city. A Jew who leaves home cannot be sure he would be back without a wound. Trembling, we opened the newspaper. Such overt hatred, and the more the better. This I see first time in my life. The Damocles sword is hanging over all of Europe. And Lipa wrote, from the Anschluss day, the political turmoil is boiling nonstop, and the nature of this filthy turmoil are the bubbles of the Jewish question, and their stinky smell excites hatred across the country. The Polish press and society breathe poisonous hatred, and wild molded animosity penetrates the public body and pollutes the air. Lipa hoped for a courageous Jewish leadership. Quote, the time is of emergency. There is pressure and political depression. The Jewish community is drowning in a sea of words without content and action, and no one takes a constructive action. No one knows what to do, and there is no one to fight, to guide. As it is the custom, the Polish Jewish opinions are divided. Violence in among Jewish parties increased. Lipa reported that the anti-Zionist bond started with a new trick. Quote, assaults. Yesterday they assaulted our meeting and terribly beat one Lifshitz. But the violence was especially involved with the revisionists. Not only did they found the Tel Haifa to disrupt the Keren Kayemet's campaigns, quote, they assaulted the General Zionist house in Lublin, broke lamps, tore books, broke furniture, according to the rules, just according to the rules of a pogrom. In addition, an issue close to Lipa's Hebraist heart rose then, quote, the language wars. It is again a subject for exciting debates and polemics among the parties that have nothing practical to offer. The contention serves to fill up the boring vacuum, hollow thinking, and emptiness of the heart. Lipa the Zionist regrettably admitted that neither Zionism has answers. The Bund won elections, and he says, the Jew evidently has no faith in the Zionists. Toward the end of the decade, the focus in Poland shifted to the winds of war. Hadassah admitted she was, quote, afraid of wars, afraid of a war. Although, quote, some people nevertheless are not afraid, go out and in. In 1939, the parents were still hoping that, quote, it might be possible for you two to come this summer. Thus, Lipa and Hadassah went on with life, but lived between hope and despair. Quote, we live, that is the nature of the Jew. He adapts to anything and lives his life. There's nothing comparable to his strength. We wonder how it is possible to live and breathe such air absorbed entirely by mad human hatred, snake venom, and teeth gnashing. And despite that, we live and move and occupy ourselves with settling the world and settling Eretz Israel. Jews hope, gather courage, and build the country. Isn't that one of God's marvels? God pours into the soul confidence in this tough time. The one who gave us strength for 2,000 years will also give us strength now. But this is faith, not an answer to a nation that has no real assets, but its faith. These are Lipa's words. At the same time, we learn about middle-class Jews' joys of life. They often took trips and vacations in pension hotels. Quote, we went on a wonderful trip to Chorsing. We came back on boats. It was like an enchanted fairy tale, wrote Hadassah in 1933. In the winter of 37, she went for 19 days to Zakopane. Lipa joined her for, quote, trips on foot and on sledge. The nature views are so marvelous, mountains, snow, and the white backgrounds. The forest dark green is hanging on the mountain slopes. And Hadassah marveled, underneath the shining snow and above the shining sun pampers us, and around the mighty mountains are of all colors, from green to white. Hadassah especially frequented Otwotsk, the town near Warsaw, where Jews went to spend weekends and vacations. She also accompanied Esther, her daughter, for the school summer camps there. Lipa liked Otwotsk too. Quote, the beauty is hard to describe. The sun, the air is pure and fresh air. And joyful spring is smiling, filling the airspace. In addition, they also went to Spitz, Krynice, Ostrova, and Droskinki, on which they wrote, the place is wonderful. Thick forests and water pour out of spring in valley and mountain. Can say that not many such sites existed in Eretz Israel. They communicated their emotional attachment to Poland, notwithstanding the dark times for Jews. A bit more about personal life. Many private practical matters were also documented in the letters. For example, Lipa wrote to the couple on Haifa, may you soon move to the new apartment. Is there a garden? Is the furniture ready? Do you have a balcony? Is the room big, wide, and do sun rays go through it? And there in an entertaining subject, a radio, an attraction at the time still, that Batya and Moshe wanted to purchase. Hadassah promised, quote, because you need money for the radio, I will send you 2 Eretz Israel liras. You need to buy a good kind. I want to participate in the cost, but it is hard to say when I might get a permit. When and if at all. In the meantime, Esther revealed a secret. We also want to buy a radio, but Ima refuses. Finally, with the permit, Hadassah noted sarcastically, if the radio is such an attraction for you, buy for yourself a radio. They did not give up on the idea as she hoped. Lipa, however, congratulated them for the purchase. Quote, may joy always be in your home. May you use it with satisfaction when with all the best. Sometimes the correspondence revealed more curious details. For example, to communicate better with the British, Moshe wrote he was taking English classes. And as it turned out, Lipa was taking English classes too at the same time. But Hadassah is pleased for Moshe, but as usual, nagging him. Why don't you learn Arabic? In my opinion, it is more important than English. Since the families moved to Warsaw, Hadassah was under much pressure. She cared for her elderly father in Lublin, and after he died, was responsible for the administration of his 8th Stachica, am I saying it right? Stachica Street building in Lublin, of about 20 rental apartments and storefronts. We learn how hard were her frequent train travels and work there. Quote, I got so much work and headaches. I was occupied from daybreak to sunset. On top, she managed the bookkeeping for Lipa's uncle pension in Otwotsk and cared for Lipa's 2 unmarried sisters who live in the Lublin building. Quote, after big efforts, I succeeded in guaranteeing a pension I succeeded in guaranteeing a pension for old Hannah. In addition to the apartment, she gets heating, and I pay her some zloty so that she can live without worries and in full rest. However, Hadassah was resentful that the sisters hardly ever worked. All those tasks, nevertheless, that she had to do in Lublin and Warsaw did not prevent Hadassah from involvement in a women's general Zionist political organization. Lipa reported that she was busy in meetings. Quote, the telephone rings, she rings, and people ring to us. The machine is working. Esther also needed paternal attention. Quote, she's a good young woman, smart and talented, Ima wrote. She writes Polish exceptionally well. She is the first not only in her class, but in the entire gymnasium almost. But Hebrew, she writes with big mistakes. So Esther used to receive davar for children, davar le'iladim, in the mail from Moshe, so she could read additional Hebrew. Anyway, Hadassah was not satisfied with the school. Quote, Yehudia is a school for aristocrats. They pay more attention to the exterior than the interior. I don't like that type. But it is known that all the schools in Warsaw suffer from that illness, and I cannot cure them. Esther was a young teen when Moshe left Poland. He hardly knew her. Hadassah wrote to him, she is extreme, not in her views, but in her character. She reminded him that now at 18, his sister was a young woman, no longer a child. On growing up, Esther the adolescent wrote on herself, quote, I now have my own room. You cannot believe how happy I am. Finally, I'm no longer a, quote, nomadic person roaming from room to room. I have recently entered the world, in quotes. I go to theater, music, movies, and read. Another topic was immigration, Aliyah. A complex subject for the family as early as 1934, but especially from 1937, was the possibility of immigrating. Moshe constantly pressed his parents to come. They wished to go, quote, of course, we want with all our hearts and souls to be in Eretz Israel, but the letter exposed obstacles. First, certificates were hard to get, very hard, even for, quote, recommended candidates like them, that is, Zionist activists, etc. Quote, the decisions are made in Jerusalem, Lipa reminded. I have not received any promise. There is a wait list for 5 or 6 years. We need to wait for the next schedule. Second were the risk in Palestine. It is necessary to wait until the situation in Eretz Israel will clear, but eventually, they write, we will be in Eretz Israel. Don't think for a moment that our eyes are shut and that we don't see what happens around us. Our eyes see and ears hear, and if we are not smart, totally foolish, we aren't either. But the thing is very complicated. We need to take such a step. We need to take such a step very thoughtfully and carefully. They even considered a trip for Hadassah to investigate the conditions which Lipa insisted was impossible to do through letters. Third was the economic argument. Selling the Lublin property and bringing the money to Palestine was what Moshe proposed. But the parents claimed they would not be able to get a good price. Besides, it would be hard or impossible to transfer the money, live on it, and buy something in Eretz Israel. They did not mention other possible reasons, such as no suitable work for Lipa in the Yishuv, or his commitment to the important Zionist work in Poland. Now we move to some political work, the way it reflects from the letters. Lipa did share with his son information about his job at the Keren Kayemet in Tarbut and the intensive involvement in the general Zionists. Lipa worked and traveled much. He described a few days visit in Vilna, for example. Quote, I visited gymnasiums, schools, I organized teacher councils, students committees, youth office, Witzos committee, etc., etc. Nerve-wracking. In addition to frequent fundraising events, the Karen's Galila project in 1939 to raise large funds to purchase land in the north of Palestine was a huge undertaking which Lipa directed. Meeting with Hartzfeld, Greenbaum, Bistritsky, but the most important political guest, the head of the Jewish agency, Moshe Shertok, later Moshe Sharet, inaugurated the event. Lipa writes, quote, after weeks working day and night, nervous wracking and nonstop excitement, physical and mental efforts, I took a breath. Indeed, the achievements of the two central organizations of Polish Zionism in the years Lipa headed them were remarkable. Growth of the fund, the youth movement's involvement, and thousands of students in Tarbut Hebrew schools went to his credit. His personality, commitment, and administrative capacities contributed to the success even during difficult years. Lipa served as a delegate to the Keren Kayem to Zionist congresses in 1933 and 35. In the 20th Congress in Zurich, in 37, he was selected to co-direct the General Zionist fraction with Moshe Kleinbaum, later Sneh, a politically hard but prestigious job. From that Congress, he sent a remarkable letter. He wrote, quote, the Congress began with Chaim Weizmann address. We are still under the impression of his speech. Such a thing has not been heard for many years. In addition to the excellent rhetoric and the stylistic charm, beauty, and profound contents, the address was such a sensation, for it was bitter and cruel polemics on England. Weizmann, with no restraint, said on England what was on his heart, on its evil treatment of the nation of Israel. And all that with wit and on the mark. To the next Congress in 1939 in Geneva, Lipa did not go. He stayed in Warsaw as all the delegates went there, fought their way to get back home. A new tragic era had begun. Now to conclude this talk, what happened to the family later in the Holocaust in Israel? Okay. The family missed two opportunities to flee from Warsaw to Palestine with legal papers in 1939 and 1940. They chose to remain in the ghetto. Lipa was recruited by Dr. Emanuel Ringenblum to take central part in Onek Shabbat group and archive. They became close friends. Lipa oversaw the building committees, the ghetto self-help, and led political and Hebrew cultural activities. During the ghetto uprising, he was a member of the Jewish National Committee, ZKN, responsible for donations for arms. Later, he was captured by the Gestapo during an attempt to smuggle him to the Aryan side. After camps Bujin and Krasnik, in January 1945, he was murdered in Mauthausen. About Hadassah, we know only that she was killed in Buchenwald. Esther was a heroine. As a member of the youth movement Dror, she functioned as a courier in a mission in spring 1942, smuggling materials from the ghetto to France in the East. The Nazis caught her on a train and killed her. She was 22. Moshe, my father, in due course, successfully climbed the Electricity Corporation's administrative ladder. Moreover, he studied law at the Hebrew University, becoming a lawyer, just as his parents would have wished for him. Thank you very much for listening. If you have questions or comments, gladly.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Avital, for such an amazing lecture. Interesting and very moving. Wow. It's really, it's a chapter of very important history, and these materials has so much value. It's so valuable, and not only for researchers, but also for family, and it represents many other families that were connected from Poland to Palestine, and then who stayed in Poland did not survive. So thank you very much, really.
Thank you.
We learned a lot, and here we have also some researchers of our Poland Forum members that we can learn our ego documents is so important when we work and we make researches about this period. It's really unique. It's really unique, and it's a treasure. And I see Noam from Lochamei HaGetaot is with us. Yes, Noam, it's really a treasure. So if someone would like to ask any questions, please, this is the time.
Yes, I am Avital's friend here in Colima. My name is Flavia. It was
Flavia.
really, yes, hello Avital, how are you? We shared 5 years ago a workshop that we talked about our lives, our family, our mother. It were different topics we had to be working on, and you really drove me again to those afternoons we shared with Veronica, who passed away 4 years ago, and she made us live beautiful moments of our life and really terrible moments of our lives also. And you really moved me on this beautiful lecture, in this beautiful reading, and it is a treasure, as Lee Gaur says. It is really a treasure what you have in those letters, the story of a time that was shared with a lot of Jews and with a lot of Polish people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This was the purpose to moving all of you. And let me remind again, I here see Noam Rachmilevich, who's the archivist in charge of the collection. And the collection is pretty much ready to look at, to visit, for those who can read Hebrew, of course.
No.
Or can still learn Hebrew. Meantime, I'll learn Polish. Yes.
It's really
Thank you again.
Thank you. It really reflects the period, the critical years, you know, the critical years before the World War II broke. And I think it's a material for a book. And Avital, it's not only for an article, it's really for a book. Your next book, I suppose, will be on this subject.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yes.
Oh,
I've been working on it. I have a lot done already.
Yes.
Yeah.
So other questions? Yes, we have here our friends. Yes, Carol. Yes, please.
I just want to thank you. It was very interesting. For me, it was especially interesting because I was studying in Lublin. I was walking by the Staszica street you mentioned. Now I'm living very near Otwock. So I would like to be one of the first readers of your book. If you ever wrote it,
Thank you.
please. This is extremely interesting for us in Poland because this is the word that vanished, and the presentation you gave show us a little of this word, this vanished word. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the book is at the works. It will just take some more time, but it should come out at some point.
Yeah, looking forward.
I have not, the thing is that The Holocaust period is also, of course, also requires work, and this is more difficult. And I don't want to focus only on it. Many of the things are known, and I really personally prefer the pre-war period.
But you mentioned the collaboration or working with Ringelblum, and yes, now they published a lot in the Żydowski Instytut Historyczny, some books about the materials of the Ringelblum archive. So maybe Lipa is mentioned in those materials.
Yes, yes, I've seen some of the materials online that they have. They're still busy with much translation. And since I don't read Polish, which is a problem.
But we have here friends from Poland, so we can work together about this subject.
Maybe they can help. Yeah, but it is a huge project. And as I mentioned, he was active in other things, in the youth movements, in the ghetto activities, etc.
So it is very interesting to look at those materials in the Zich. How did they talk about him? Did they mention him, his activities, so you can collect more materials about him?
No, of course they mentioned him, yeah.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, of course they mentioned him many different times, and some of the activities in the communities that he was busy with, especially the mutual help, the social work in the ghetto. So yeah, there is material. Yes.
Oh, it's really important. And
anyone else? Anything?
Yes. So maybe our friends, yes, we read Polish.
I hope my translations were appropriate.
It was very clear. It was very clear. Yes. Who wants to add something?
Hi.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to thank you, Avital. This was really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your work. We emailed a while ago, and I'm working on my grandmother.
Yes,
so some resonances in our projects. A grandmother who was a New Yorker who was in Palestine from 1932 to 33, and I'm working with her letters also. And I really loved hearing your work. And there were two things that really jumped out to me as ways to think about the project and flesh it out. And if this is helpful to you, wonderful. And if it's not, I can't wait to see the book in whatever form it comes out. But one thing that stood out to me based on my reading of the correspondence between my grandma and her great-grandparents was this, the criticism that came from the older generation that thought they knew how their child should see Palestine, what they should experience, how they should become professional, how they should find a life partner, whatever it was. And one of the ways that I read that in my great-grandma's correspondence is a desire to pass on their social capital. These are people who can't send that much, can't do that much, aren't there, but they want to direct their children according to the rules that they know of, even though they don't really know what the rules are in British Mandate Palestine at the time. And so I think trying to understand more, and this is what Dr. Gaynor, I hope I'm saying her name right, seemed to be indicating, understanding more of what, to the extent that you can, of what Poland looked like at the time. You have such rich, wonderful sources. The more that you can contextualize them, read them as not just, individual voices, but how much did they represent a generation that's really stuck, that's trying to work and figure out how to pay rents and collect rents and traveling and taking care of an older generation and taking care of a younger generation. It's just like caught up in daily life and can't get a paperwork to leave the country. They're supposed to leave, they're not supposed to leave. I think the more that you can flesh out that story, the richer this book will be. And I think it'll be a really wonderful book. But this decision of should I stay or should I go? How much do I push to go? How many opportunities are there to go? I mean, as you say, they choose twice not to go. It really raises these questions of that a generation faced of should they go, shouldn't they go, under what kind of circumstances. And I think trying to understand that decision-making process in the context of that broader generation will really enrich the story that you're telling. But thank you so much.
Of course, Sharon, this is just reading a presentation. All this as us as historians, for us, it's pretty obvious that that's what we have to contextualize and see the generational stuff. I have a lot of stuff about education, about status of women, et cetera, that will be included and analyzed. And actually, I was thinking about you when I mentioned that many people use their family stuff. At the beginning, I said I was thinking also of you, that you use your family written stuff.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's the micro history which we are dealing in now. And as you said, Sharon, a daily life. It's so important to understand and to get a perspective of those simple decisions of daily life. So it's really important. Thank you. And Witold, you wanted to ask something, please.
Yes, I just wanted to, of course, thank you for your lecture. And this is really important material. And I wanted to ask you when the book will appear, and will it be in English or other languages, maybe Spanish? Of course, it's I think it's very important because it shows the events in two countries, in Poland and Palestine, and in the period of big transformation, like you said, this is a story of Hasidic family, but which became Zionist and very active in different organizations, and so we can learn really a lot of history of this period. And my impression is that in recent years we talk a lot, and there are many books, a lot about the Holocaust, but this period between the wars, or since the beginning of the century, is really under research, and we should maybe deal much more with this period. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I agree with you about this period is a bit neglected. Not that it has not been studied at all, but comparison to the interest in the Holocaust years is definitely too minimal. And yeah, I hope my contribution will be something. Now, when the book comes out, well, I'm not making promises here. As you know, books are a long process. I'm planning, and I'm writing it in Hebrew for kind of obvious emotional reasons, I think. My family is all in Israel. Some of it is basically for them, for the younger generation. In Spanish, I don't know if later on someone wants to translate it to English or Spanish or any language.
Or Polish.
Polish, of course. I will be happy, but the first edition definitely will be in Hebrew. Yes.
One more question, very short. Is this material open to everybody? For example, if anybody wants to translate it into Polish and publish it, will it be possible or not?
Yeah, we have with us here Noam Rachmilevich, who is the archivist. Maybe you want to comment on it, Noam? Are you still there?
Noam?
He's gone?
Yes, but unmute, Noam. You are on mute. Noam, we cannot hear you. You are on mute. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Yes.
Yes,
so,
please.
Thank you. First of all, Avital, it was very interesting to listen to you, the stories. And I wanted to refer to two things. First, about for the publication question. All of the material is, those letters are kept here in the Ghetto Fighters House archive, and they are on web. We uploaded them on web, so you can access them. You have the number of the file, I can't remember, 42041, no, Vital? I think. But anyway, if you enter our website, Ghetto Fighters House Archive, and you write Bloch Lipa or Bloch Eliezer, you will be able to see it, to see all of the scans. As for publication of a book for the rights, I think we can you can talk with personally either with us in the archive and with Avital or Daniela about the rights of publication. I think it can be arranged with the credits and so on. Avital, I hope. I think, please let me know what you think of. So this is one thing. The second thing I wanted to say was about the importance of the ego documents. So these letters are actually ego documents, and you can see the picture from within, what's on the people's mind. And I think today it's very important that we have ego documents, because there's a large, unfortunately, there's a large tendency, well, in Israel, but in many other countries as well, in Poland, Hungary, but also in other places, to try to paint the history different than it was. And once we read the ego documents and we see how people lived, we cannot fall into this illusion. Also here, for example, in one of the letters, Vital, that you described, about the revisionists, about their anger about something. And yesterday I listened to Halina Birnsbaum's testimony, and she said, criticizing things about Jewish policemen. Such things sometimes do not appear in global reports, ideological reports, because everyone wants to present his own group as a hero. The Jews want to present themselves as always positive and heroes. The Poles, many Poles want to present themselves as righteous among nations. Everyone has his interest to show himself better than he was. And such ego documents can give us a clear picture and enable us to reconstruct the history.
Thank you very much, Noam, because it summarizes our session today. And I would like also to emphasize that the ego documents give the personal voice. And as you said, the personal voice can give us other perspective and not to paint the history in different colors. So it's an authentic voice, and it is very important. And really thank you, and thank you all. If anyone would like to say something before we close this session, please, this is the moment. And our time is running, and we have 2 minutes to finish our session. So if someone would like to add or summarize, this is the time.
As I mentioned at the beginning, for me, an important point is the relationship within the family that are created through the correspondence, because we're talking about years of physical separation, and what there was is basically the correspondence, and it affected each side. This is also an interesting thing to see in terms of family history. And of course, the general history, what letters can contribute to information about the surrounding history.
Yes. And also there can be a chapter B to interview the family member who read those letters.
I had 4 hours of interviews with my father that I did somewhere in the mid-90s, I think, and they have been very helpful, but they are mostly about himself and about the 20s, more when he was younger. So yes, Well, all this generation is gone. What can I say?
Yes. And now we have a new generation that they are reading also those letters. So what is their attitude toward those letters? So
Yeah, for them.
it's a without an ending. It's a story
Right.
without an ending.
You're
So
right.
we come to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much, all of you, and thank you, Avital, for really an amazing, amazing lecture and very interesting. And I think that in the name of all our audience, thank you very much. Keep on doing this great, great, great job.
I am working.
Thank you very much. Really, thank you very much. And I will put here also a heart. And if everyone will put it so we can express our feeling to this session, to this lecture, and to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. And to our forum members, thank you very much for participating. Also, there will be I recorded this lecture, so it will take something like a week, and then I will send you the link on YouTube. And we will meet again in May with our forum members, and all of you are invited. So Avital, I will send you the link for our next lecture on May, and you are invited. Thank you. And good evening.
Thank you.
I will be there.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye,
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Thank you very much.